In this chapter, we're going to create an interface for the controls for the foot roll, the toe up and down, as well as an adjustment for the knee. Before we start, one of the best things we can do is use an attribute holder modifier to hold all the custom attributes. If we just add them to the base model here, they're going to get mixed in with a lot of controls just for the modeling process of the spline. This will be confusing for the animators as to where they've gone if one of these might be open and pushes the controls further down the list. The other advantage to using the attribute holder and having your scripted custom attributes on another modifier is that you can copy that modifier to another object and have those custom attributes move along with it. The first thing we're going to have to do is install the attribute holder that ships with 3D Studio Max 6. In the folder 3D Studio Max 6 scripts, plugin scripts, you'll find the modifier attributeholder.ms file. This is a simple plugin script made from a simple mod, and it's just an empty modifier. Copy and place that script into the std plugs, std scripts folder, and then restart 3D Studio Max. Once you've done that, you can select the control object at the foot, open the modifiers, and you'll find attribute holder and add that. You'll notice the attribute holder is basically just a blank modifier. It doesn't do anything at all. It has no function other than to simply collect custom attributes and hold them for later use. There are two ways we can create scripted custom attributes. One is with a built-in tool under the animation Add Custom Attributes. This is really just a Max script that writes Max script. It makes it very easy for entry-level people to add custom attributes, spinners and sliders and drop-down menus for use in our interfaces. Using it is very simple. If you want to add a spinner, you choose spinner of a float value, you give it a name, and down here it'll show you what the attribute will look like. We want to choose that we want to put it on the current modifier. We can align it to the right if we want, change the width, the range from and to, the default starting values, and then press Add. It will show up now on our attribute holder. The disadvantage of this tool is you don't have full control of everything that you can do with scripting a attribute set with 3D Studio Max. There is also not an edit button. You can download a script that will update this from the internet that allow you an edit button, but still you cannot achieve what you can achieve if you know how to do a very simple task, and that is handwrite scripted custom attributes. We're going to take it to that next level and not use this tool, but instead write the attributes by hand. I just removed the attribute holder and re-added it. That means I can delete my whole attribute set quite easily just by deleting the modifier that it's held on. Again, that would become more of a problem if it was on the base level model. To write scripted custom attributes, I'm going to say Max script new script, and open a new script window. Another advantage of doing it this way is that once I've written this script for creating my custom attribute set for a foot, I can save this script and rerun it on every other character I ever make, and never have to go through the process of making each spinner or slider one at a time. For creating the attribute definition, we need to first create just a variable. In this case, we'll just call our variable CA for custom attribute. Equals. I'm just going to resize my text so it's a little easier to see. You can do that by holding down Control and using the wheel mouse. The next keyword is called attributes, and that basically says that this is an attribute definition that's coming next. We then need a name for our attributes, and we'll call this foot controls. Down to the next line, I'm going to put an open and closing round bracket, and everything that goes inside these two round brackets will be the definition for the custom attribute. Good programming practice says we should tab in each time we have a set of brackets inside of brackets inside of brackets so that it becomes easy to read. The next section of a scripted custom attribute is what's called the parameter block. The parameter block holds all the parameters that you will see in the track view. The parameters need a name as well, and we'll give that a short form. And that is a parameter block now. It currently has no parameters inside of it. The next thing that we're going to need for our custom attribute is going to be a rollout. This is a rollout in Max, and it holds UI items that we can grab and spin and type into whatever else. To create a rollout, it's very simple. We type the word rollout. We give it an internal name for Max to read. And I'm just going to call that foot R for foot roll, or foot rollout. And then we need to add an external name for the viewer to see. And the external name is something like this that you can see across the top of this bar here, called custom attributes. In this case, we'll call it foot controls. And again, a set of brackets. Everything inside this set of brackets will be the UI that will show up here. Everything that's in this set of brackets will be the parameters that these UI items control. Now we need to connect these two together. The parameter block needs to know which rollout it will be working with. We can tell it by saying rollout and then foot R. I'm going to open the MaxScript listener. And the listener is an area that feeds back information to us about what we're doing. Every time we evaluate a script, it'll tell us whether or not we have any errors. You can say File, Evaluate All, and if you get any red, you've done something wrong. In this case, what it returns back to is attribute def foot controls. So there's our attribute definition called foot controls, and it currently contains this information. What we're going to need is 3 spinners. One for the roll of the foot from the heel through the ball onto the toe. Another is for the toe up and down, and a third is going to be for the attitude of the knee. So let's create all our spinners first. Spinners are created by simply typing the word spinner. The next step, again, just like the rollout, we have to give the spinner an internal name for MaxScript to recognize. You can't have spaces in these names. They have to be one continuous set of text. You can use underscores or dashes, just not spaces. In my case, I simply use ideas like this where I capitalize the next word if I need it. So this is going to be foot roll, and then we need to put an external name for the viewer to see, something that's descriptive. Sounds pretty good to call it foot roll as well. But this time we can actually put a space in the name because it's a string. It's not a problem to have spaces. You can see spaces in words on the interface. Next thing we need to do is give this a range. The range is basically the smallest value the spinner can go to, the largest value the spinner can go to, and the starting value in that order. In this case, we want to be able to roll the foot to negative 90 degrees. We want it to be able to go to positive 90 degrees. And we want to start the spinner at a value of 0. The next spinner I'm going to do is for the toes. And we can reuse the same range. The next spinner will be the knee. And we can probably reuse the same range again. Now, because we're using the same range over and over, we can actually simplify our code a little bit. And we can create a variable inside the rollout that will handle the ranges. I'm going to call it range equals this range value. And then for each of the spinners, I'm going to say range equals range. Now if I decide I want to change the range for all of them at any time, I can just change the one set of values, and it'll update for all of them. The next thing we need to do is we need to create parameters where the values of these spinners will be held and where the animation tracks will show up. We're going to use the names of each of the spinners for each of the parameters. Now I prefer to make sure that we actually have different names for each of these, but you need a descriptive one for the animators to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the name of each of the spinners to have the letters SP after it for spinner. For the parameter, we need to set a type of value that would be held in this parameter. In this case, it's going to be a float value, so 1.2 it could be. So we say type, number sign, float. This creates a new parameter called foot roll, and it's going to be able to hold float values. We can now tie this parameter directly to the spinner we want to control by telling it which UI element it will be controlling. And in this case, the UI element will be the foot roll spinner. Now anytime this spinner changes, it will notify this parameter to change. Quickly set up the other ones by doing some quick copy and paste. Holding down Control and Shift dragging a selection, by the way, will copy it. And I'm going to do a file, evaluate, and you can see that it is coming up with an error message. And I've just made a classic error. One of the things we need to do is we need to declare this variable to be local. There we go. So now you've got to see how errors look. And unfortunately, it is a very cryptic one. Local basically states that this variable will only exist inside of this rollout. I had written it originally just with the word range, and basically that made the range value global, and all of Max was trying to get access to it, and it says within a scripted custom attribute set that can't happen. So I had to declare that variable as a local variable. Now that I can evaluate this, and Control E will evaluate it, you can see that I get an attribute definition. The next step we need to do is take this attribute definition and apply it to our currently selected object. In Max, a currently selected object is defined by a $sign. And if I press enter with that object selected, it'll return back that editable spline with the name rectangle01. The next thing we need to do is we need to tell it that it's going to be actually looking at this modifier. So $.modifiers will return the entire modifier list. I'm going to tell it to just get the first one, and that's the first one on top of the stack. So $.modifiers 1 in square brackets says get me the first one in the list. And to reevaluate a line in the listener, I'm going to use Shift Enter. You can also do that at any point in time in the Max script listener. Highlighting a line and pressing Shift Enter will only evaluate whatever's been highlighted. So you can see now that I evaluate this line here, it's giving us back empty modifier attribute holder. So we know we're getting this correct modifier. Okay, so let's go about actually adding our custom attributes. Custom attributes .add is a command in MaxScript for adding this custom attribute set. We need then to tell it what we're going to be adding it to. So in this case, it will be $sign modifiers 1, and then we need to tell it which custom attribute definition we're going to be using. And now CA, because we said CA equals this attribute definition, if I evaluate just the CA with a Shift Enter, you can see it returns just that definition. So I'm going to say CA. So now we've got custom attributes .add $sign modifiers 1, the attribute definition. And if I highlight that line now and say Shift Enter, we get a response back in the listener saying true, and the attribute definition has now been added to the attribute holder. This scripted tool can now be saved, and at any point in time select an object and reevaluate this whole script, and it will add to the first modifier this attribute definition. It makes it a lot faster to rig the second character, a little bit slower to rig the first one.